Milwaukee Public Schools spending a whole week on Black Lives Matter activism. Good thing that kids don't need to be literate to learn how to hate cops. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, that only unique program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're talking about being offended, which seems to be a natural state of man for the progressives. At Yale, a famous art course is getting the boot because it's just too darn white. Plus, Concordia College says there is a nasty racist hiding inside every white person. And a Rutgers student is told never to quote the Bible in academic paper because it might offend Muslims and Jews. Aren't Muslims and Jews people who read Bibles?
Yes.
But we start with Black Lives Matter week being glorified in schools across the country. Look, let me start by saying that Milwaukee public schools are among the worst in the country. The reading and the math proficiencies of these inner city kids is lowest of the low. I mean, there's only a couple, like Detroit may be worse than Milwaukee. They are some of the worst performing schools in the entire country. And now they're going to spend an entire week of classes focusing on Black Lives Matter activism, as if this is somehow going to change those numbers.
Well, it's because it's Black Lives Matter at School National Week of Action.
Oh.
So you just naturally have to celebrate it. The Milwaukee Public Schools and their teachers' unions clearly are all into this. And so there's going to be events all week long, all day, all night, on campus, off campus. And there's going to be, where's the education happening? We don't know. But the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association says that they are strongly encouraging all members to get involved.
Now take a look at this clip and tell me what actual real link to anything like education this has.
Our goal is for all children to feel valued and their voices to be heard. Saying Black Lives Matter levels the playing field. Saying Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that others don't.
Plan for a strong future. Help build a pipeline for Black educators.
We are the leaders of tomorrow. Our lives matter.
So saying Black Lives Matter levels the playing field. Please, Superintendent, explain how that stupid catchphrase means anything when the kids in your schools don't know how to read, including the kids who study with black teachers and the kids who have black superintendents like you. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to do math. Let me quote this guy again. Our goal is for all children to feel valued and their voices to be heard. Maybe we need them to shut up and learn. Maybe we need all the kids in public schools to stop engaging in these stupid, superficial, left-wing political gambits and start buckling down and doing some work. We want them to feel valued. Okay. I mean, they're there for school. They're there to learn. You're giving them no learning. You're letting them graduate from elementary, middle, and high school without the skills requisite to move forward. You are socially promoting these kids. You are not helping them. How can you create value in children when the one thing that you're supposed to do, you don't do?
Our goal is for all children to read books and their math problems to be answered correctly.
Isn't that showing that Black Lives Matter? If black kids start to get the kind of education that white kids get, not because of racism, not because the curriculum's #too white. Are you telling me, Superintendent, that the so-called white curriculum that actually has achievement built into it, that wants to see you move to higher levels of literacy, to higher levels of math, to higher levels of scientific understanding, you're telling me that that's the problem? And then are you correspondingly telling me, sir, that the reason black kids aren't doing those things is because it's not a black thing, right? Are you telling me that what you want here is Black Lives Matter education, which means kids should get diplomas without learning something? This whole thing is a ridiculous scam.
And when we're talking about, Milwaukee Public Schools children don't know math and they don't know English, have any English, it's so bad, it's 12%. We're not talking like, 1 in 3 kids, which would even be atrocious, but 12% of MPS students are proficient in math. And I think that number is only going to 12. Maybe that's how high they can count because they're not doing any math. Instead, they're spending their time, and I'm talking about 3-year-olds in the pre-kindergarten classes. They're in same with English. English is only 13%. They're spending their time doing transgender lessons with My Princess Boy, Julian is a mermaid, and of course, I Am Jazz. This is what they're spending their time on.
Yeah, let me repeat that. The curriculum for 3-year-old pre-kindergarten. First of all, why are 3-year-olds in school?
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, here is the recommendation reading books for that 3-year-old class. They reinforce transgender lessons like My Princess Boy, Julian is a Mermaid, and I Am Jazz. There's also a Black Lives Matter coloring book and activity book for 3-year-olds. What is this going to do? You're politicizing. In fact, by politicizing kids this way, you're telling them the reason they don't know anything has nothing to do with them or their schools or their idiot superintendents. It has to do with white racism. And the other thing that gets me, what else are they learning at 3? This kid-friendly principle includes restorative justice for 3-year-olds, globalism, transgender affirming, and queer affirming. How do you explain any of those things to a 3-year-old?
Well, they have these principles. That's how they explain it to them. There's these 13 Black Lives Matter principles, and one of the examples. So they give different terms and then their definition. White supremacy. Some systems, like schools and jails, have white supremacy built into them because white people have had so much power for so long.
Right, and globalism. This just shows you that Black Lives Matter isn't really about black people. Oh. It's really about the international globalist socialist commune that's coming in the future, right? What do they define globalism is for 3-year-olds? Globalism means that we are thinking about all the different people all over the world and thinking about ways to keep things fair everywhere, the guide explains, right?
Oh, fairness.
Isn't it fairness and globalism,
fairness.
Right? And so to 3-year-olds. Meanwhile, these 3-year-olds, by the time they graduate high school, read at an appallingly low level, and they can't do math.
But they know that they get to choose their own gender.
Yep.
All right, well, speaking of white supremacy before, we're going to go to Yale because it's too white at Yale. Well, so what they're going to do is get rid of a famous art history class because this art, it's so white. Art is racist, and starting next year, Yale University will no longer offer the Introduction to Art History, Renaissance to Present. It was a once-renowned survey course, meaning everyone on campus could take that, get a little exposure to some quality art. But no, because it's covering that art is through Western civilization, white people, they are saying it's deemed insufficient.
This is one of the hallmark courses at Yale. This has been a biggie, right? We're all a common education, shared value, talking about art, right? And now, because a couple of kids, we're told, are uneasy with the course. They're uneasy with it. The art history department has decided to get rid of it. Because I got news for you, art history department at Yale University. Your job is to make kids uneasy. Your job is not to make them easy, right? Math is hard. I feel uneasy with fractions, Katie. And the only way you can fix that is stop teaching fractions.
Okay.
I feel uneasy with calculus and geometry. I feel uneasy reading books that have long sentences. I feel uneasy reading books that aren't all picture books.
Oh.
And the absurdity of this. You think the math program? I used to think the math program would have laughed at that. If you say to a Yale math professor, "I feel uneasy with your fractions," we're at the point now where I wouldn't be surprised if the math professor said, "Oh, how dare we offer this kind of horrible education for you? It's too white."
Well, they would say that because we do know math is
cultural
racist.
Math. Yep.
We did know that. Well, the Yale Daily News reported that the Yale professor Vincent Scully, he's the one who actually taught this course. It used to, like you said, be one of the quintessential classes that everyone would take it. And this spring is going to be the final rendition of it. And then as the course's current instructor, Tim Berenger, told the Yale Daily News, he plans to have the course kind of go on, but it's going to demonstrate, he's going to have a history of art that doesn't just mean Western art. He's going to then have other regions, other genres, other traditions that are all equally deserving of study to be put into this class.
And listen to the syllabus. This again, just like Black Lives Matter is about globalism and socialism, it's really not about black kids. Notice this from the syllabus, the new syllabus. Emphasis will be placed on the relationship between European art and other world traditions. This class will also consider art in relation to questions of gender, class, and race and discuss its involvement with Western capitalism, its relationship with climate change will be a key theme. So now an art history course is only acceptable if it's another course about climate change. And explain to me how you're going to use the history of art to teach climate change. And the answer is you're not. You're not teaching art anymore.
Well, and that's why when they at Yale announced, hey, we're going to cancel the class the way it is, over 400 students had shopped the class. The way it works at Yale is you get to go shopping during the first week of classes and see what you actually like. 400 students shopped the class, and the course is actually capped at 300. So 300 students would have been exposed to this moving forward. But
the fact that 400 kids wanted the class, they don't matter.
No.
What matters is there were a couple of kids who were uneasy about this.
Yes.
Because the purpose of college now is easy, right? Nothing that makes you uneasy, just easy.
And that's why at Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, you need to know that you cannot be a nasty racist. But if you're white, just know that you're a nasty racist. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, obviously, was a couple weeks ago here on January 20th, and the college decided to honor the man. But in the current woke culture that we live, basically they celebrated the opposite of what MLK actually stood for. And so they had these various kind of sessions, if you will. And this one was called How to Embrace Your Inner Racist, a session for white people.
White people only.
White people only. It was presented by Ahmed Afzal. He's a professor of religion and social activism. And I looked at his blog and his Twitter, and so climate change, everything under
art
the
history
sun.
professors at Yale are really now about climate change. This professor of religion is really a social justice activist.
Yes, and in his session, the learning outcomes included, after participating in this session, attendees will be able to, 1, recognize and acknowledge that there is a nasty little racist inside them, and to do so without becoming angry or defensive.
I'm neither angry nor defensive when I simply point out to you, how do you know my racist is little? Why are you phobic against short people? Why is my racist little? Why can't my racist be tall? Why can't my inner racist be a transgender person? Why can't my inner racist? I with all due respect to Ahmed, right? I think he's making some seriously discriminatory, heightist allusions.
This is true. And number 2, as a learning outcome, you will be able to, white person, describe the skills of psychological flexibility that they must develop in order to make authentic choices in defiance of their racist tendencies.
I hope you see how Orwellian this is. Psychological flexibility. That means you have to give up your psychology. You have to be willing to accept our brainwashing. When they say psychological flexibility, that's what they mean. You mean to come to despise your whiteness. You need to recognize that non-whiteness is the only cure for whiteness. But as a white person, you can't participate in non-white culture because that's appropriation. When they mention things like psychological flexibility, this is a very disturbing word, right? It means that let us warp your understanding of yourself and others the way we want you to be warped.
And lest you think we were exaggerating about it being for white people, there's a note on the bottom that says, note, this session is for white people only. While we won't stop people of color from attending, they should know that their presence in the room is likely to interfere with the effectiveness of this session. Ahmed should not be allowed in the room. Ahmed should not be allowed in the room. That's all I got to say.
You would think so because Ahmed is not white. But that's where the psychological flexibility comes in, right?
There it is.
That means we'll do things as minorities that make no sense to you. We'll say things that are clearly racist, but you have to recognize they're not because they're directed at you and you're white and you deserve it. That's what we mean by psychological flexibility. And again, you see a theme all the way through the universities now. Everybody is a professor of social justice who just happen to have hobbies. Right? I have 3 degrees in economics, and I'm an economics professor at Harvard University. But actually, economics is my hobby. Right? Queer identities of the African diaspora is really what I teach. But I use economics as the credential that got me in here. And whether it's the art history professor who's going to be teaching the climate change effect of art, or whether it's our friend Ahmad here, who's really a professor of religion, who doesn't really spend much time talking about religion at all. It's all about psychological flexibility and transforming white people into allies.
I think you need to come up with a new course for what what your true passion
All right,
is,
well,
your calling.
I'm a professor of Shakespeare, so let's see. While I'm a professor of Shakespeare, my Shakespeare courses will focus on, right, the lack of prescription drugs for indigenous short people. We'll go back to the short people thing. The lack of, right, this is what we do at the college and the university. This is what we do in school now. It's what Milwaukee Public Schools are doing, right? Let's do that. I'm a superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools, and my purpose is not to teach kids reading and math. My purpose is to make sure that every voice is heard, right? That's okay. Good. Put this in when you got 400 Yale kids who want to take the stupid art history course, you're not listening to them. Presumably, they're all white kids, right?
No problem.
That must be all straight, pasty white kids. But maybe the solution, as we've learned today, is Ahmed. I feel uneasy with what you're doing. Is that enough to get you to stop?
Ooh.
I mean, does my dis-ease? Does that change your ability to force me to psychologically flex a little bit? Probably not.
We'll just quick sum up with some of the other events on campus because they were just too good not to share. I would have attended and you call yourself an ally, and that was for white women only, which was supposed to encourage me to confront and analyze my participation and or my complicity in these racist systems of oppression. There was also the anti-racism for white people. There was race and environmental justice, and the Can We Stop Being Police? All of these courses, sessions, were by white professors.
Love that. Can we stop being police? Love that. And you scratch a stupid progressive initiative like this, and you see liberal white people right behind it, who are always exempted from this, right? It takes no psychological flexibility whatsoever to be pasty white and be lecturing other white people about their whiteness.
And speaking of that, we're going to go to Rutgers University, where a student was told that he was not allowed to quote the Bible in any of his academic papers because it might offend Muslims and Jewish students.
Yeah, and the sad tragedy about that is that this is a professor who doesn't understand that the Bible is a book. So you're telling me now that you got a Jewish kid, right, who's making an argument and cites the Torah. That would be off limits to this person.
Well, yeah, she doesn't know there's an Old Testament, a New Testament.
Doesn't. And she doesn't know that Muslims trace their origins all the way back to Ishmael through Abraham and back to the book of Genesis. None of that stuff. And this is the funny thing. I guarantee if there was a Muslim kid in there who cited something in the Old Testament to make a point, this person would have no problem with that.
Well, in the article, and we'll discuss it in a minute, but in the article they interviewed a kid who says he's an atheist, and he's like, I have no problem with it either. But basically, here's what happened. At the Rutgers University New Brunswick campus, a student actually named Peter Cordy, he also works for Campus Reform. He's a political science student. He wrote an autobiographical paper for his Intro to Gender, Race, and Sexuality class. So you knew this was going to be problematic. So he wrote this paper, and he decided that he was going to cite the Bible in it. And so what's happened is that the professor, Kathy Sandler, included in her remarks on Cordy's paper that the use of the quote was basically inappropriate and that you should avoid quoting scripture in academic papers unless you're commenting on scripture. And that's what she wrote exactly on his paper. And so he got a B+ on the paper itself, and he asked if he could talk to her. And then he recorded the conversation. And he said that the professor could be heard elaborating on her written remarks by reminding Cordy that the separation of church and state exists and that the Bible, quote, may not be for everyone.
And this is the thing that's so frustrating, right? What does separation of church and state mean to this woman? A, she doesn't know the first thing about the Bible. Number one. Number two, separation of church and state means that you can never talk about the Bible.
Yeah, see, if he would have known to follow up with, where does it say separation of church and state? Well, in the Constitution, clearly it says that.
I'm sure what would have happened if he had said to her, where in the Constitution can you not talk about the Bible? She would have said, well, the Constitution is one of those problematic documents.
Exactly.
It should probably not be.
Precisely.
It's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone.
We have separation of church and state, and all those old, white, rich, racist men, they believed in God. They believed in a creator.
This is true. I'm guessing that's, and the thing is, we're talking about the Muslim or Jew. She actually discusses then the specific use of the scripture was offensive, and she said, I think, for instance, this wouldn't work for a Muslim or Jewish person.
And would you say to a Muslim kid, this wouldn't work for Christian kids? You can't do it. Never in a stinking million years would you do that, right? Hardworking Muslim kid wants to write a paper, cites something in the Old Testament related to the origins of the religion of Islam, and then the teacher pulls him aside and says, That wouldn't work for Christian kids, so don't do it.
Yeah, and
never in a million years.
And the thing that gets you too is when I love when professors say, well, it's an academic paper, so you make sure to cite the proper sources.
The Bible has been cited by more academics going back to Maimonides, right? Going all the way back, but to St. Augustine of Hippo, for God's sake, in the 4th century. The Bible has been cited by more academics, probably, than any other source in the history of the world, but not for Kathy Sander.
And yet now we've been told you can use Wikipedia as a legit source. But no, not the Bible.
Yes, let's all stop being police. Let's all stop being... Can we all stop being police? I just feel so uneasy.
Well, that's going to wrap up this Tuesday show. But before you go, won't you please be my neighbor and also share this episode of the Dr. Duke Show? Just click on the little button right there on your screen that says share. It's that easy.
We need you to partner with us. If you have a business and you're a fan of the show, consider partnering with us with advertising. Visit freedomproject.com/advertise to learn more, and we can help grow your business. Common sense is universal. This is common sense. We have common sense people watching. You have a product that is common sense friendly. Let's make it happen. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, you stay educated, my friends, despite the uneasiness of it all.